Chapter 60. After the lecture, the audience of delegates shuffled out of the auditorium and checked their eyelines for messages, hoping that whatever was next on their schedule would be an improvement on this speaker. Ray hadn't understood a word Lance had said either, but knowing him, that had been intentional. He hadn't prepared. Back in the day, she and her friends were often late with their assignments, but whereas Ray could only offer the thinnest, most transparent excuses, Lance had a knack of weaving words in such a way as to leave others both perplexed and wary of any further questioning. Sure, these days he was up on a stage, but Ray had seen this kind of routine from him before. It was nice to see he still had the knack, and wished him luck. On her way out, Ray checked her feed with a few habitual taps on her eyeline. The list of unseen episodes of TV shows she subscribed to was getting unmanageably long. It was difficult to know where to start, but she intended on making a dent in them once she'd found the rooms where she was staying. The news headlines panned across her projection. More developments in the mass car murder case, and a breaking story about a viral outbreak in the north. Nothing life-threatening, some minor impact on male fertility or something. There was an unopened document in her inbox from Yolanta. The technical specifications for the metastasis equipment she'd use tomorrow with the Dismamona board. Always a bonus if you knew how to turn the machine on and everything. The gravity of her situation returned to her, and Ray drew a sharp breath. It was seriously unethical to manipulate a whole cluster according to the wishes of two of its members. Ray wondered what the proposal Yolanta and Pascal wanted the board to accept was about. The two directors were taking a risk, so it must have been important. Still, she supposed this was the kind of devious shit powerful people got up to all the time. It would surely boil down to the fuck-fabulous twins acquiring unimaginable sums of money, or power, or both. The social incarnation figure on Ray's new eyeline leapt up between the windows she was projecting. The kitten, come unicorn, was hopping up and down like it needed the toilet, and waving frantically at something off-screen. Shit, she thought. The little fucker has seen someone I know. Ray tapped through her menus to find the settings for her online persona, but by the time she'd found the folder, it was too late. The cute little arsehole was hugging another avatar, a purple fox with a pair of glasses, and smothering it in kisses that floated into the air in a stream of bursting glitter hearts. A new message pinged across her projection. "Hey, Funbags, nice surprise. You should have said you were coming. I'd have done more gags. Drink?" Hell. It was Lance. Ray wondered why her technology was hell-bent on betraying her at every opportunity. Well, that was that. She'd have to meet him now. What did she care anyway? This was trivial after everything that had happened over the last few days. She tapped out her reply. "Well, I think we could all use a coffee after sitting through that." "Looks like that fish wants a bite of your cake." Ray pointed through the glass wall at the grey ox-eye herring wafting past. She'd have preferred something more interesting to remark on, some multicoloured exotic sea life with patterns and crazy fins and tentacles and a ghastly face. But the waters around the cafe's glass exterior were pretty much empty. The plain-looking fish would have to do. Oh, excuse me. Lance looked apologetically at her. He was engrossed with a chain of communications and hadn't quite caught what she'd said. The fish. There, swimming behind you. She pointed over his shoulder. Ah, yes, I see. He looked a little puzzled. What about it? Oh, nothing. I just thought it looked funny. It's gone now, I think. Yes, swam off down there. Sorry, I'll just... Ray poked at her enormous slice of cake. Lance was back on his eyeline. They were sat in a booth with plump red and white striped vinyl benches, each with a steaming cup of something brown and frothy and a slice of cake. Apart from the server drone behind the counter, they had the cafe to themselves. It was a small place, just a scattering of round tables and a few stools by the counter. The two of them had a booth by the window. Ray scraped a mouthful of cake onto her spoon and tasted it. Her stomach was churning, and the size of her portion seemed nothing but intimidating. The deeply chocolatey fudge stuff would normally have sent her cross-eyed and silly, but now it just stirred her nausea. She pointed at her plate with her spoon. They don't skimp on the portions, do they? Lance wrapped up whatever he'd been doing and closed his projection. Sorry about that. Wes is always busy. Looks like one of the corporations might fund some R&D I'm involved in. All manner of investors swaggering about the symposium. God, it's great to see you. What are you up to? Apart from stalking me, of course. I've got some clients here, actually. Bigwigs. Board members. Oh, metastasis then. Yeah. Can I ask which board? Sure, but you won't believe me. Try me. Mamona. Shut up! Really? Really? Wow. How did you land that gig? Long story. First session tomorrow morning. I've never worked with them before. Frankly, I'm shitting myself. God, not surprised. But congratulations, you. That is some client. I'm sure you'll be fine. Wish I was as confident. Oh, come on, you'll breeze it. You're a bloody legend. Lance sat back down and put both his hands palm down on the table in front of him. Listen, I don't mean to bug you, but there's kind of this colossal great elephant in the room. Ray squinted at him. Just the one. The other day, that reunion. I know. I'm glad we've bumped into one another like this. Just us two. So, come on. What happened, Ray? Are you all right? That wasn't like you. Ray stirred her coffee, messing up the geometric pattern the server drone had worked into the froth. The resulting smudge resembled a finger or a... No, it wasn't a finger. Honestly, how would you know? She said, into her cup. It's been years, Lance. Watching TV like that, losing your shit so spectacularly, that's not the Ray I remember. The server drone twisted a few knobs on the coffee machine, and steam shot out of a pipe in a furious hiss. Ray looked up at him without an ounce of humour. And? Well, I thought, I don't know, I thought you could use a shoulder, is all. I had a bad day. A bad week. I was upset, obviously. Ray spoke in a flat tone, without a shadow of apology. Sorry it made you so uncomfortable, Lance. No, I mean, fine by me and everything. We don't need to talk about it. Well, I Don't need to talk about it, Lance. Okay, he gave a nervous laugh. Not a problem. They hit the surface for some fresh sea air and sunlight. Changing subject to something lighter, Ray and Lance exchanged stories about amusing and quirky metastasis simulations they'd worked in since graduating. Strolling around the vertical gardens of a geodesic dome, they took turns in recounting their spiciest anecdotes, each presenting evidence that they had been exposed to the most sensational clusters, and that, in fact, it was the other one who had it easy. Oh, well, if you think that's bad, listen, you ought to try a team of pro golfers whose libidinal energies are utterly unprocessed. I mean, if you've not worked in a sim populated exclusively by lizards, you've just not lived. And so on. Though they graduated in the same cohort, Ray had a lot more experience in metastasis. She'd checked in and out of hundreds of simulations over the years, churning through clusters at an unrelenting pace. She certainly had the numbers to draw on, and during her so-called career, she'd inevitably come up against some real eyebrow raisers. Lance was more of a specialist. He may not have sat through the sheer quantity of sims as Ray, but the quality of his experience was quite different. As a developer, he'd plunged himself into all kinds of experimental metastasis scenarios, testing variables in both the hardware and the wetware, as he called the clusters, which Ray had simply never encountered. The heat of the afternoon waned, and they took a catamaran over to another habitat. On board, the two of them snacked on fresh grilled mackerel, served in patties of warm flatbread. The crisp, charred skin of the fish, salty. The fillets, succulent. The simple dollop of sour cream, delicious and messy. Ray finished hers first, then went down the short flight of steps that dropped down from the stern of the hull to wash her hands in the waves as they scurried by. The silhouette of Ray's head and shoulders bounced haphazardly over the water as she dipped her hands into the sea. She noticed the shape of another shadowy reflection, but a glance to her left confirmed that no one was there. Turning back to the waves, she heard his voice. "You like him, don't you?" asked Mr. Thumb. Ray sighed and rolled her eyes. What does it matter? It matters. I'm not doing this. I'm not. You've got to admit, he's quite tasty. I'm not indulging you. I'm not. Smart too. I'm not talking to you. We're not doing this. What if he catches me babbling to myself? So we just shoot the breeze in here then, he said, speaking in her head. He doesn't have to hear a thing. Ray gritted her teeth as a wave of fast anger flared up inside her. Get out! The thought exploded in a pulse of aggression. Fine, I'm off. Ray splashed some water on her face and tried to gather herself. He is quite cute, though. She struck herself across the cheek and silently screamed into her mind with as much force as she could muster. Okay, have it your way, I'm gone. When she was sure Mr. Thumb was going to leave her alone, Ray turned and ascended the 3 or 4 steps back up to the deck. Lance was on a call, steadying himself with one hand against the mast, while nodding along with whatever the caller was saying. Ray sat on a lounger and checked the symposium programme, waiting for him to finish up. He joined her after a minute, standing by the rails. Frowning with concern, Lance pointed at his cheek. What happened to your face? Ray realised she must have left a mark where she'd slapped herself. Oh, nothing. Thin skin. Sensitive skin. So, what's the event this evening, then? I don't see it on the programme. God, what was it again? Borvold, I think. Yes, Borvold group party. Sorry, gathering. Gathering? He cast a cynical glance at her. Yes, quite. You won't find it in there. It's private. Ray raised an eyebrow and mocked being impressed. Don't get too excited. For every programmed event the Wes organisers put on, there's 2 more hosted by private firms. That's what the real players come for. Private meetings during the day and private gatherings at night. Nobody wants to sit through a 5-hour panel on jobs creation strategy and then spend all evening nibbling canapes, struggling to read some stranger's name badge. No, while the sun's up, it's closed meetings where the only thing on the agenda is business. And when it's down, it's invite-only gatherings. Right. How did you get your invite then? God, I can't remember. I've dozens of them. Smell you? No, really, it's no big thing. The problem with hosting an exclusive social event is that if it's too exclusive, it tends to be very quiet and boring. You need enough bodies in the room for an atmosphere. So you're just making up the numbers? Absolutely. And you're sure you're okay with me being your +1? Seriously, Ray, you really ought to lower your expectations. Call me an old curmudgeon, but in my experience, these things are most disagreeable. Someone's coming that I need to catch up with, so you'll have to entertain yourself for a bit. But, well, I wouldn't blame you if you vacated the premises after a couple of cocktails. It all gets a bit, well, you'll see.